She's in fear right now. I am in elation right now. I'm fine. I'm good here. I love it. I want to, maybe I communicate with somebody else. I get where you are. I know you can't hear me. So let's just take a pause a little bit.
Make sure to stand close because it's cinematic.
What do you mean stand close? I'm where you are.
Back.
I'm where,
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode.
Oh, this is this week's episode? I don't even know what we're recording. I just get on. She tez.
You have not seen the two of us on here together in a few weeks. It's been
You really got your arm around me, don't you?
It's been all episodes of either Scott or me. I guess last week you
I'm taller anyway.
Last week you did see the webinar.
Yes.
And if you didn't, we're going to invite you many times throughout this few minutes to check out the webinar.
What are you talking about here?
Today, in this week's episode. So last week we, unveiled our Quadrant Theory and how we're about to take a group of 10 people through this process, through this Quadrant Theory alongside of ketamine in the process. What we wanted to talk about this week and what we will continue probably now for the next couple of weeks to talk about is, of course, Quadrant Theory, because we are just so enraptured by the idea ourselves. Enraptured by the idea ourselves that it fits the map, overlays pretty much everything in your life, it seems as though, so far. So we want to talk about that, and we want to educate you guys on how seeing through this theory and seeing through this lens and this model and this system, how it will affect different areas of your life. And so today we're going to talk about how this can affect your relationships and really how...
That's right. She told me this earlier today, that we would do this and we would talk about relationships with using the Quadrant Theory.
You can improve, greatly improve.
Or understand yourself.
And understand and improve the quality of your relationships.
Yes.
With those people that really mean a lot to you. The ones that don't, this may actually make you want to decide to step away. But the ones that really are dear to your heart, that maybe you're struggling with or have struggles with communication, things like that, this model and this map will really help you understand it. So I'm going to turn it over to you while I go turn off the AC, because when I go to edit this, you'll hear that loud in the background. So go on.
All right. Well, first off, before we get into this, I would just like to say, as a business owner for 40 years, and if anybody asks me what's the most important thing in your business, it's believing in your product. I believed in the product that I sold, which was building retail stores, restaurants. I just believed in the product. I believed in my guys who were building the product so much. So it made it so much easier. In this coaching thing that we have done in the last 6 years, I will say the Quadrant Theory, working with ketamine, helping other people really realize who they are. For us, without a doubt, this is the product. It's like, finally, we've sorted through all these things and we've reached the finale, this goal that, this Quadrant Theory that came to us. It came, download, whatever you want to say, but wow, the more and more, and we've been kind of dealing with this probably for about 2 months. We've been working with this theory of ours, and, both in a way to describe it in an everyday situation, how it looks that way, as far as analogies and all that. That's my deal. Her deal is really knuckling down and showing you the whys and why it works, and the actual science behind it, what happened to this person, the science behind how it interrupts the brain, all that stuff. It's been mind-blowing for us, and we really know this is something big. This is really an uncovering, which is kind of crazy for us because we're just two very regular people. When you start bringing a relationship into this can be your, husband, wife, your partner. This could also be your child. This could also be your boss. This could also, but friend, anybody, mother, sister, whatever, right? And these are usually the relationships that either make our life really wonderful and amazing or a real struggle. I have to deal with my sister who is a B and she needs all this.
Or my boss.
Or my boss because I have to work with them every day.
Or my husband.
We're just going to keep going here all the time, aren't we? I'm sorry, she's in her quadrant 1. But when you can map where they are, I think the one thing for me in building a business and having a very long-term relationship and, families and all that, I thought everybody else was right. I knew that there was something in me that was there, but I thought everybody else was right. There must be something wrong with me. That went with my clients that I worked for, because I worked for some big name, corporations and companies. And I thought, well, they must know better than I did. I never gave myself that. Now looking back and mapping not only them to see where they were in the quadrants, but to see where I was in the quadrants, oh my God, did it make so much sense. The struggles that I had was where I was deficient in the other quadrants. I would have never been able to see that because there was no map for me. You'll hear her talk about map till your ears bleed, but it's true. To be able to map where you are and to know, I've been stuck in quadrant 1. And then I go into quadrant 2 and it affects quadrant 1. Meanwhile, 4 and 3 are completely ignored. And then others where they're strictly in their quadrant 4, they don't relate to anybody, anything. Jobs are difficult. Money is incredibly difficult because it doesn't resonate in them because they're not. So we may be jumping ahead because you don't really, you may not.
So excited about it.
Yeah, you may not understand the quadrants.
Well, I don't think we should necessarily go too into detail with them because
yes, dear.
If you want to go into more detail, we did an hour-long webinar.
We did.
And I'll put it up here. I don't know where it will be.
Yeah.
But it will be somewhere that you can watch that full hour and it gives you a really deep dive into the 4 quadrants. So I think today just talking about how really you can use them.
Well, because you can tell, it opens up a whole nother communication tool between, especially like a husband and wife partners, right? Because you have a life together, you have a family together, you have a household together, you have an environment together, all together. And it is to your benefit to equalize that, environment, that relationship. In other words, it's to your benefit that you hear your partner, understand where your partner is, because it's going to make your environment better, right? And you want them to do the same. You want them to know where you are. But it's almost like speaking a different language.
Yeah.
When somebody is going through something, an awakening or a real struggle, and the other person isn't, or vice versa, it's really difficult to understand where that other person is. As much as you want to understand, they are feeling something that you are not. And that can be a real struggle in the communication and understanding. Quadrant theory really helps once you understand what the quadrants are and you understand, well, my partner is now in this quadrant, or when they tell you I'm in this quadrant right now, I can't hear what you're talking about. There's no deficiency in me, because that's the first thing we do. We think internally, what's wrong with me? And he should be able to see me this way, and he doesn't care about me.
It's either what's wrong with me or what's wrong with him.
Right? And because it's not at all. It's just because they're in a different quadrant. And when you understand that, then you start to see, oh, wait a minute. This is why he can't see what I'm dealing with right now, because he's in a totally different space, totally different quadrant. Not his fault, because we all have 4. He's just in that one. I'm in this one. So how can we equalize? And that's really what we are all about, is helping people equalize their quadrants. So you now know your map. You know their map.
Yeah.
Regardless if it's your husband, your mother, or your boss, you will know where they are. And you will be able to see why they are the way they are.
Yeah.
And then you can just say to yourself, I can't. He's just stuck in this quadrant. He's stuck in number 1. I get it. He's worried about that. And he goes to number 2 because that's where. So without getting into all that, we'll kind of leave it at that. Yes?
Yeah, I think I'd like to add an example.
Well,
just
let's
to make
do
it really
that.
practical for people. Actually, 2 examples to make it, really bring it in and integrate it. So when, as you said, we, for those of you that don't have any idea who we are, we met at a Dr.Joe Dispenza. If you have no idea who he is, you can look him up. But we met at one of his retreats and workshops, and he teaches meditation. He teaches all about Quadrant 4, basically. And when we met, we had already gone individually to a bunch of his workshops, and then when we met, we went together to a bunch of his workshops. Totally in 14. That's not all. He does only 7-day week-longs now, but before he did like 2 days and 4 days. Anywho, the very common theme we saw when going to these workshops is that mostly women, would have some kind of awakening or go to his retreats and workshops, and then they would go home and their husbands wouldn't understand it. And many times this ended up in marriages that ended, ours being 2 of them, and rightfully so, right? Some of those marriages, mine definitely included, didn't have solid roots to begin with, and others, people grow and change. And so half of that, I would say, is a totally normal process. 50%. I would say the other 50% could be solved by using this quadrant theory. What does that mean? So someone goes and they're a quadrant one or an analyzer or a learner. They like to see things through an analytical perspective. Joe speaks to them because he speaks to the science. So he speaks to the quadrant learners, and then he brings them together for 7 days and says, hey, it's okay to jump into this quadrant 4, basically. The science is telling you it's okay to jump into this quadrant 4. They spend a week in quadrant 4. They are just having mystical experiences. They're having understanding. They're opening their heart. They're being present. I have any of the 2 in 1 really there. Then they come home and they're trying to speak to their spouse, right? Let's say their spouse is a 1 and 2 or dominant. They're trying to speak to a 1 and 2er while they're in a 4, right? And the 2 without the 1 and 2 are even understanding what the quadrants are. They're like, whoa, you've lost your mind. Yeah. You've joined a cult. You've gone crazy. I can't understand you. However, if you take these 2 individuals, you teach them the quadrant theory first. You help them to understand he may not have no interest in his 4 in your way. His 4 may be hunting, right? You can access quadrant 4 by hunting. His 4 may be hunting, but at least you can have, as he said, communication and a model of understanding to go, okay, I'm moving into 4, and your 4 may look different than mine, but at least we can have communication around, honey, I'm in 4 right now, you're in 1, okay, I get it. It doesn't mean you're bad, I'm bad. There is no judgment either way. It's just an understanding to go, I'm here, you're there, and either when we communicate, I have to come to a 1 or you have to come to a 4.
Or we both meet in the middle, so to speak. Let the energy subside of, this need to have this conversation, altercation, fight, whatever. And I'm here, you're there.
Yeah.
You can't just jump out of it. It doesn't happen that way.
No.
You're not just going to jump out of it. It's coming out of it gradually so both of you can meet. And if you could have that map and that discussion, it's kind of like what you're saying. It's almost, I just got off of a roller coaster. It was the ride of a lifetime. I am ecstatic. I'm like, wow, that was unbelievable. You want to tell everybody.
Yeah.
And, you just sliced your finger and you're like in fear of, oh my God, infection and all the stuff, right? Yeah. So we can't have that. The same discussion at that point. Doesn't have all the chemicals running through her body that I have. I'm elation. She is in fear. So we can't see eye to eye in that moment. But as we now know, okay, the first thing we need to do is pause, which we've always said. We need to step back. I understand she's in fear right now. I am in elation right now. I'm fine. I'm good here. I love it. I want to, maybe I communicate with somebody else. I get where you are. I know you can't hear me. So let's just take a pause a little bit. So when we have that map and when we have that understanding, you really curtail a lot of disagreements right off the get-go. And it also helps you if you go and you tell your sister, well, I learned about this quadrant theory. I really want you to learn it with me because it makes so much sense. You are where you are, I am where I am, and we're trying to come together. Well, that's kind of difficult where we are right now. And she says, I don't want anything to do with that. Well, then you kind of know, well, I tried.
Yeah.
I did my best, and maybe I shouldn't even approach into that, argument, into that disagreement, or even a conversation, because it's not going to be a win. You're going to get pulled into a quadrant that you don't want to necessarily be, but you gave it a shot, and you just said, okay, I know my line. This is my line. I'm not going to go there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And
Absolutely.
I think that's the hardest part, is when you start to awaken 3 and 4. Of course, you want to tell people, because the chemicals, I'm glad you mentioned that, the chemicals that are released in your body are totally different for each quadrant. And so if you have, like he said, one volumes turn way up on quadrant 1, they are releasing the chemicals of fight or flight and stress. So adrenaline, norepinephrine, just cortisol, like terrible chemicals that lead to disease if you're feeling them chronically. But then you have someone in quadrant 4 who's experiencing oxytocin and dopamine and serotonin, like these amazing feel-good chemicals. You can't bring those two together, like he said. But mostly, especially with the sister example, I love that, because sometimes we tend to go, oh, 4 is better than 1. This model takes away all biases.
Yeah, there's no bias.
There is no one better than the
Yeah.
other. It's balance.
It's just what
That's
is.
all we are interested in is
Yeah.
balance. So you can look at your sister and go, okay, she's in quadrant 1 and probably 2. She's not interested in coming in 3 or 4. There's no judgment.
Right.
There's no angst. There's no,
Yeah.
I need her.
Yes.
Because you just understand she's in different quadrants, and that's okay.
Yep.
And I can continue to bring balance to mine as she does hers, because one is not better than the other.
No. And that goes not only for the quadrants, or the tanks, as we like to, describe them as tanks, that are getting water into each one, and which one's getting all the water and starving the other one. So it's all about equalizing the tanks. That's what we do in our 12-week program. But it's more to also understand the person. Oh, I know why she's been this way all this time.
Yeah.
She's been this way because she is always been in quadrant 2. I never realized that. Now I feel for her. I have sympathy for her, because what she must have been going through all this time, and you realize it, and what that does for you, it kind of releases you from this need to fix somebody, or this need for them to understand you. They can't understand you, because you can't even understand them, because you're not in the tank that they're in.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes, you do.
I love that.
Of course.
And the last thing I'll add, maybe, is, especially in a partnership, like a romantic partnership, as we share together.
Some days. I'm kidding.
When in a romantic partnership, what can tend to happen is the disagreements, the fighting, the whatever, mostly stems from both parties being in quadrant 2 at the same time, which is the wounded child. And so when the volumes turn really high in those 2 quadrants for both parties, there's no going out of it. You literally have to exit that quadrant and go into a different one, which, as Scott said, you're not going to be able to do like that. You have to disperse and diffuse, and we teach in the 12-week program actually how you're paying attention, and how your paying attention fits into each quadrant. And literally the diffuse style of attention is quadrant 3. So you learn how to captivate these tools, your breath, the way you pay attention, havening. You learn to capture these tools so that you can slowly move out of that quadrant, which means you have to take a pause, which really is where the ketamine comes in greatly. But we won't go into that this week. We'll save that for next week.
Sure. And one last thing. In that exact situation, 2 people in quadrant 2, which is basically the poor me, right? This happened to me, and this is why I am.
You need to change right now to make me feel better.
Yes. When you realize that you are there, then you need your partner to disagree with you. You need your partner to not be doing what you need them to do, so you can stay in that quadrant. that is probably the biggest realization I think people will get, is because they learn their map. And when you learn your map without, the ego involved saying, well, I am this way because, no, you are that way because you're just stuck in this thinking tank.
It's a neurological network in
it's
your
a
brain.
neurological pattern.
It's not you.
That is in your brain. It's not who you are.
No.
But you're stuck there. And when you get stuck there, suddenly you need your partner. You need your boss. You need all these people to hear you. Well, I am this way because you need that attention. Then you realize, oh, damn, I've been stuck in Quadrant 2. That's who I thought I was until now. Now I understand if I stay in Quadrant 2, I'm always going to be Quadrant 2. So now, what are my tools in order to climb out of that? So then I now know I'm out of Quadrant 2, and then maybe I'm in 4, maybe I'm in 3, maybe I'm in 1. And then to see that and then be able to use a tool it was always funny when my one son was really little, probably around 3 or 4 years old, Aiden, he would have these meltdowns. And I would sit down with him and I would say, Aid, okay, listen, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I know you're upset right now. I know this didn't go the way you wanted it to go, but there's no sense in staying there. So how about I give you 5 or 10 minutes and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. 5-10 minutes later, he's singing, he's telling poopy jokes and, hitting himself in the balls. He was just so happy. He totally forgot of where he was because I gave him the opportunity.
Cycle through.
He let himself cycle through. He was a natural balancer. He is a natural balancer of all his tanks, of all his quadrants. And that is what we hope to bring to you, whoever is watching this, to help you become aware of the quadrants, and then how do I balance these quadrants so I can live a healthier, more happy, more fulfilled life with the people around me, and most importantly, with myself. That was kind of like something, like a sale. Like this is, and if you act now, right? It's like Ronco.
Yeah, and here's the thing: it takes away all the judgment.
Now she's gonna blow it. You're gonna talk over that.
No,
that was the mic drop moment.
For somebody that used to beat up on herself a lot, not knowing I was just in a different quadrant, it was really easy to beat up on myself. But with this, you can't. You just go, oh, that's where I was. No big deal.
I move out.
Now I have the tools to change it.
All right, so now that this is where we stop, we'll go on forever.
I had to have the last word.
Well, I was told that is a problem for me.
So let me have the last word.
That I never let anybody else have the last word, and immediately I'm just like, really, bro? Like, because I got in my Quadrant 2, and I'm just like, hey, dude, do you feel good, like humiliating me right now? And I realized, like, oh man, I still got work to do. We still have work to do. We always have work to do. So there you go. That's it.
All right. So if you have any more questions, you can reach out via email. All the details are always in the description. So
magically, they show up. I have no idea how. I don't even know what happens with these things.
This is what we dive into, not just in the 12-week process, but in our retreats as well. We dive
big time
deep into this.
in the
This
retreats.
is our model for everything.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in hearing more, you can schedule an informational call down below where you're going to talk to one of us, both of us probably, or you can head to our website to find out more information. Not on Quadrant Theory because it's not on there yet, but you can email us too. So if you have any questions, reach out. We're super excited to be bringing this to the world. We believe in it so much. And we'll, like I said, all these weeks are going to be filled with more understanding of how they work and where they can work in your life. Especially maybe next week we can talk about how ketamine really is a huge deal in the process.
We could talk about ketamine and how it is the interrupter, the regulator. I love talking about that. All right, anyway, this is it.
We love you all.
That's it.
We'll
24 minutes, man.
Goodbye.